Hello, and welcome to a mini segment of 100% Real with Ruby. And a question that I get asked so often is, how would you calculate your macros? What macro calculator is the best one? What calorie calculator should I use? And what macro split should I use? The first thing I will address is never use macro splits. They are absolutely bullshit. Absolutely bullshit. Because if your calories are titrated up and down, your protein is, number one, going to be titrated up and down, and number two, it doesn't take into fact grams per body weight. So there's that. Now, something that I will say over and over again is your protein is the most important thing to set regardless of anything else. So you want to make sure that your protein is at least at 2. Hello, and welcome to a mini episode of 100% Real with Ruby. So a question that I get asked so often is, what is the best calorie calculator, macro calculator, what's the best macro split, so on and so on. And the first thing I will say is macro splits are absolute bullshit, because it doesn't, I prefer grams per kilo, and it doesn't take into account other considerations like what's your lifestyle like, what's your training like, blah, blah, blah. And it's not just about the macros, it's about the macro quality as well. So that's that out of the way. The next thing to address is that calorie calculators are absolutely bullshit, and so are macro calculators, because knowing someone's height and weight does not mean that's gonna tell what their calories are. Because it's just, I used to do this all the time. I used to be like, how tall are you? If I realized that so many people were eating a lot of calories, it's like, okay, well, how tall are you? How are you able to eat that many calories? But yes, that does play a big factor in it, but it's not the main factor. If you look at one of the things that you need to do to calculate your total calories, when you do input in a macro calculator, it's usually the activity level, and that is a main determinant for where your calories will be set. But even that isn't enough, because calorie calculators, macro calculators, do not know your diet history. They do not know your metabolic and physical health. They do not know your hormonal health. They do not know your actual activity, because you can click, okay, I'm not really active, or you might even click, I'm really active, because you consider a 2-hour gym session and a cardio session in the gym to be really active. But that is still pretty much sedentary behavior, because what are you doing the other hours outside of the gym? That is only 1 to 2 hours for however many days you go, but your training only calculates for around 5% of your total metabolic burn. So it can really set you up for failure. And for a lot of people, the more exercise they push, the more cardio they push, the more they actually take themselves out of a deficit, and the deficit isn't a deficit anymore, which is why a lot of people are like, I'm working really hard, I'm training really hard, why am I gaining weight? Well, no, it's not muscle, it's the fact that you took yourself out of a deficit. The best thing that I can recommend for a macro calculator or a calorie calculator is to literally track every single little thing that you eat for at least a week without changing anything. Even just put it on paper. But I would suggest putting it into MyFitnessPal, because then you don't have to double do things and then put that into MyFitnessPal. But just track every single little thing, make sure that you pick the right entries, and if you're not changing anything, because now you're monitoring your behavior, that will give you about maintenance for where you are with your maintenance calories. And then from there, you can decide if you want to add some or if you want to take away some, so forth and so forth. But I will also say the goal is not to diet or do a deficit on the biggest cut that you can. You want to reduce things slowly. And I always recommend, do not just do a 100 calorie drop, because you're not going to see any real changes in order to motivate you enough to keep going. At least something around the 200, 300. I usually say 250, 300 is a great place to start for most people, but then again, it really depends on where you are. If you find that your maintenance is around 1500, 1600 or any lower, you're not in a place to diet, because where are you going to go from there? 1300, 1200, That's ridiculous, and it's not maintainable. So this is where a primer phase comes in. If you've been under eating your whole life or trying to hit little calories your whole life, even if you've been trying to diet your whole life but not seeing results, not seeing the scale go down, your dieter's mentality is a stressor on your body, and it is not going to be conducive to weight loss in the future. So a calorie deficit is not a great place to start. This is where a primer phase is the best way to go. But that is typically how I say to get a calorie calculator or get a coach, because then they can actually guide you and they can adjust things, because the metabolism is a dynamic thing. What you start on isn't what you're going to stay on forever. And you can build those up if you start to create the lifestyle of a strong, fit, and active person. Another thing that calculators don't actually take into consideration is your muscle mass to fat mass, because that also plays a role in it. So yeah, I'm going to leave you with that. It's a little mini episode just because I get asked this question a lot. I hope it helps. I highly recommend working with a coach, especially if you're new to this, because it will save you so much time, so much money. Like a good coach, not just someone that looks really cheap and you know, a group programs, or someone that has competed on stage before, so they look the part, let's just get them. But get a good coach, because it will save you so much time, so much money, so much stress. And it will also keep your health in check, because a lot of them can make you super obsessive about tracking, super obsessive about your body image, and give you a worse relationship with food and with your body in the long term. So I highly recommend that, even if it's just to get started, because it can really set you on the right path and save you a lot of time, a lot of money. It's like you would take a car to a mechanic. So look after your body the right way, because then it's like, think of it as proactive health. A lot of people don't care so much about the health, so much about all of this stuff, until that's all they have to care about because they're sick or whatever. It's almost like, okay, let me just buy this really cheap tool, get this really cheap job, it'll save me money for whatever else you're doing. And then you realize about a month, 2 months, maybe 3 months down the road, you're going to have to buy another one because you got the cop-out version before. But yeah, just something that I've been thinking about. I hope this helps. If you want to choose me as your coach, you can reach out to me also. But everyone that I bring onto this podcast, myself included, are people that I trust. So